You're listening to the Dennis Prager Show, and I have one of the preeminent thinkers of our time, Charles Murray, on. Whether you agree with him or not, I happen to agree with him on an issue that he just wrote about so eloquently that I beg you to read the piece, which is up at pragerradio.com at the blog area. Charles Murray is a senior fellow at the American Enterprise Institute. Charles, you've written an article here that so resonates with me that I just want to cheer. It's titled The Europe Syndrome and the Challenge to American Exceptionalism. First of all, welcome back to my show. It's been a while.
Dennis, it's a great pleasure.
Thank you. I want to tell you of a thesis that I put forth before my listeners, which I feel just gets more credibility from your piece, that the future of humanity is essentially one of three or a fourth thing that I'll mention. It's either Islam or European-based secular left ideology, or American/Judeo-Christian, or chaos. And your description of the secular left European model is just spectacular. What's wrong with it? It seems so lovely. You know, you drive through Europe. It seems to work. Europe.
Yeah, and I guess that's one of the things we ought to start out with. I love to go to Amsterdam or Stockholm or Paris or Rome. I mean, they're beautiful places. They're nice people. You know.
I have the same exact reaction. Been to every single European country except Albania, and I totally have, and most many times, and I agree with you. It's great to visit, but there's a problem. You have the best description of what I call the soullessness of Europe.
And I'm afraid that what happens is that the European system takes too much of the life out of life, and by that I mean, as far as I can tell, there is among Europe's young people a spreading mentality which goes like this. Human beings are a collection of chemicals, and they're activated, and then for a period of time they're active, and then they're deactivated, and the purpose of life is to while away the time as pleasantly as possible between activation and deactivation, between birth and death. I hear that both from people I talk to in Europe, but also you can read it in scholarly journals and journalistic accounts. Life does not have any meaning anymore.
No, I'm just listening because that's one of the lines from your piece, and it is exactly right. The question that I have a lot of questions, but one is, because I care about this issue just like you do about the great question of happiness. Their happiness is the happiness, in effect, of my two dogs. And I'm not calling these people dogs, God forbid. I'm merely saying, though, that when my dog's needs are met, and certainly when they are also petted, they are just delighted, and they don't want more. And it seems that a lot of Europeans don't want more.
Let me think of, if I can put it another way. Think of the times that we're kind of enjoying ourselves in a casual kind of way. We've gone to the beach for a week. We've enjoyed our time at the beach. We're feeling kind of lazy, but that's not the kind of thing that when you get to be an old man, as I'm rapidly becoming, you look back on and say, this is why my life has been well lived. Entertainments and pleasures are not the same as deep satisfactions, and I think deep satisfactions are at the core of what we mean when we talk about happiness.
You give four things that essentially give the possibility of deep satisfactions to human beings: family, community, vocation, faith.
Right.
And folks, the brilliance of the piece, and it is a brilliant piece, I rarely use that term for a piece of writing, is that the European model, and I quote, enfeebles every single one of these four.
Yeah.
Why don't you explain that? How does the European model enfeeble, weaken all four of the things that can give people lasting satisfaction?
Let's
begin
start with one, the family, and I'll talk about that a bit, and then extend it. It extends to the rest. Look, families are vital, robust, exciting institutions because they have important responsibilities that if the family doesn't do them, won't get done. I'm sure you're a parent, I'm a parent, and lots of your listeners are parents, and we all know that the day-to-day activities of raising kids is not the most fun. It can be tedious, it's time-consuming. But we do it anyway because if we don't do it, important things won't happen, and so the family remains robust. What happens when you have the extensive welfare state, as you have in Europe, but it also works in the same way in the United States, is once the government says, oh, we'll take part of the trouble out of raising kids. We'll take some of the trouble out of fathering a child. We'll take some of the trouble out of supporting a child once it's been born. Once it does that, with the best of intentions, it takes some of the action away from the family, and the very natural response of people, this is what we all do, is if somebody else will take care of it, then we let them do it. And so the family, the more that the government says, we're here to help, the more the people say, okay, and the family becomes enfeebled. Same thing with communities.
Wait. Let's just wait. Hold on. I want to elaborate on the family part. So, for example, would you say that government-sponsored or government-funded daycare is an example?
Yeah, that's definitely an example whereby you free up somebody to go do something else. Now, is it ever a good thing to have daycare? Of course it is. Sometimes it's a very useful thing. That's not really the point. The point is what happens when the government says, okay, here is a function of the family that we will now take over or we will supplement. Some of the energy that goes into forming families is depleted. Another quick example that is very obvious, which is, why is it that in the old days, throughout history, throughout societies, a young man who impregnated a young woman was in big, big trouble if he didn't marry her? I mean, this is very close to a universal. And it accounts for the fact that there were so extremely few children born out of wedlock throughout history across the world until recently. And the reason was that there were a whole set of social norms and expectations based on the fact that communities could not tolerate having large numbers of women who had babies but no husbands to help. I mean, it was not economically viable. Well, when the government makes it possible for women to have babies without husbands, and it's not an immediate burden on the community, guess what? Some of the energy that went into maintaining stable families also is depleted. That's what I mean when I use the general phrase that the extensive welfare state, as represented by the European model, drains some of the life from life.
If you can't fail, then there isn't great pleasure in your success. That's
right. You know, there are a couple of things that have to happen before you can take deep satisfaction in something. First, the thing you're doing has to involve a lot of effort. You know, nothing that is easy gives you that much satisfaction. And it has to be something where you have responsibility for the outcome, and it has to be important. You know, and there aren't that many things in life that meet all three of those criteria, which is why I think basically you get down to the four: vocation, family, faith, and community.
The lack of deep satisfactions in life, do you think that is a factor in the rise of drug use?
Yes. I think that the relationship is probably pretty direct. And if you think particularly about young people, we have undergone a transformation of the role of adolescence in the family and in the community just in the last century. If you go back, you don't have to go back thousands of years or even hundreds of years. If you simply go back 100 years, adolescents among the great majority of families in this country were playing important roles. If they were on farms, they were working side by side with their father from the time they were 5 or 6 or 7 years old. But even when they were living in cities, they were at that age oftentimes contributing economically to the families. From the time they became adolescents, which is a very difficult time, they had responsibilities, they had things that they had to do. They were not make work, they were the real thing, and a whole bunch of that went away. And when that happens, you end up, I think, with, well, what am I going to divert myself with?
Yeah, a real ennui beyond boredom. The piece, which I consider truly to be one of the most important explanations of where we are and the where we're going, really. The Europe Syndrome, as he calls it, and the challenge to American exceptionalism. It's from The American. It's up at PragerRadio.com, 1-8-PRAGER-776. We continue.